I see you over there, podcaster, creating content, and you're just not attracting the right audience, and you're not getting those desired results. Well, that is why I brought on Christine, the host of Let's Get Visible Entrepreneurs, because she is the queen of podcast guesting. She's a seasoned podcaster, and we are going to talk about how podcast guesting can up-level your life, your business, your podcast, how to repurpose all that content without feeling frustrated and disconnected from your true purpose, and ditching that overwhelm, maybe with a slight pivot or a rebrand of your show so that you can start building that visibility that you truly want and using your stories. Yes, we're talking about storytelling because that's the true secret sauce to connecting with your audience and getting those listeners who get onto your podcast to keep coming back for more, because podcasting is one of the deepest ways you can connect with your audience without being face to face with somebody. So are you ready? Because Christine is seriously dropping some magic today. Let's go. Welcome to Your Podcast is Someone's Life Raft, the podcast that believes every story has the power to be a life raft. I'm your host, Jennifer Dragonette. I've helped hundreds of podcasters find purpose and profits from their shows. In a world filled with so much noise, we're here to explore the art of podcasting with purpose. It's about stories that can inspire, heal, and even provide a cure for dreaded pod fade. I've always believed that your story is a guiding light for those navigating the turbulent waters of life and of their business. We'll dive into the strategies that not only grow your podcast, but allow you to make a meaningful impact and income along the way. Selling through stories, healing through narratives, and discovering the power of collaborative magic that happens when like-minded humans come together. So if you're a heart-centered entrepreneur looking to make tsunamis in the world with your unique message, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. So I am excited to welcome my guest today. You were part of the Cure for Pod Fade, and I had to bring you back today because you had such a powerful story and you've been doing things with your show that a lot of people give up at. So welcome back, or welcome to Your Podcast is Someone's Life Raft, Christine.
Thank you so much for having me and having me back on a conversation with you.
So we were just having a conversation before we hopped on. And why I'm really excited is that you just went through a rebrand. If you're listening when this comes out, we're actually talking in February, but you just went through a rebrand. And while we were talking, you're like, I rebranded twice. And I want to just know your podcasting journey. Like, what got you started? And then how did you know it was time?
My podcasting journey started with podcast guesting. And we spoke about that on the Cure for Pod Fade. That was 2016. And I started my podcast in February of 2020. And honestly, the reason that I started it, I had been recording episodes of it as lives, because that's what felt easy for me at the time, Facebook Lives. I've been recording episodes of it, interviewing folks since July of the previous year of 2019. So they were batching. It was so batched. It was great. And then I got accepted to speak at PodFest in March 2020, like literally flew home and had one day before everything closed. And so I went, you know what? Now's the time to launch this thing because I want to be a contributor. And it really was a passion project. My first iteration of my podcast was called No One's Ever Asked Me That. And it was a nod to my background as a documentarian and an interviewer, where I was able to intuitively ask people questions and pull things out of them that no matter how many times, hundreds, thousands they've been interviewed, they'd never said that before. They never had to think about that before. And I got these raw, off-the-cuff answers. Can you relate to that? Like, do you do that too?
After a few years, I've gotten good at it. But in first, no. I was terrible at finding questions, getting people on.
It took me years too, right? It only showed up as the beginning of podcasting because I had been doing it for like 18, 19 years by that point in media, right? And helping understand like the roots of people's branding and marketing and stuff. But anyway, so I ran that for a couple of years. And then in that time, really became known for podcast guesting and like pivoted my whole business to really serve people through podcast guesting, which again is what we spoke about before. So it went from this passion project to, could we do something strategic? And could we speak really to the expertise and begin to use this as the start of all of my content? Because in that journey, I've very much figured out that this is where my best content came out. And that's probably true for a lot of people listening. Like you say something, you black out because you're in flow. Someone asks you to repeat it and you're like, I have no idea what I just said. I cannot repeat it, right?
Yeah.
Can you relate to that?
Oh my goodness, all the time.
So, right, when you're podcasting or when you're coaching your clients, right, it's like this wisdom comes out of your mouth and then it's gone. And this is inherited. Anytime I ask my dad a strategic question, he was in business for a long time, he'll be like, now write this down because I'm only going to be able to say it once. I'm like, good for you for knowing that, right? Of course, now we record everything, which is wonderful. So we did that. I did that for a while and I brought on a co-host, my integrator in my business, Nicole. And because we were both really working on podcast guesting. And then it became clear that there was not a product market fit between podcast guesting, the way that we wanted to teach it, the way that we were teaching it and coaching on it, and what people wanted. Everybody thought I was helping people start a podcast. They like blacked out on the whole guesting thing. Still to this day, people are like, oh, you help people start podcasts. And I'm like, nowhere have I positioned myself in that way, right? Go talk to Jennifer for that. And then they really wanted me to do it for them, but they didn't want to do the 5% that is required to make our pitch what it is and get the acceptance rate that it has and blah, 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 right? Like if you want to have the best pitch in the industry with the highest acceptance rate, you got to be willing to do 5 minutes worth of work. And if you're not, I'm not here for that. Like I require that, right? So it just became like pretty frustrated, to be honest with you, because people weren't willing to build relationships. And I think that's one of the things that you really teach well and that this podcast is about is the power of connection, the power of community, and how you can really do that using podcasting, right? Like, I mean, can't tell you the number of times I've cried or a guest has cried, right? Like, and not that that's the mark of episode, but you're getting into real healing stuff, right? And you're creating this intimate connection that then gets to be shared with people who get to share that. And I love that. And that was missing, kind of like you, like from the title Podcast Guesting for Profit. To be honest with you, we were attracting the wrong people. And I think that you and I share like this desire to really help these heart-centered folks. And of course, strategy is important. And of course, action is important. And we were leading because we wanted to be found with making money. And that got people, while it is a big part of our work, of course, can't run a business without making money. Like it was leading to people who were very transactional, which is like the absolute opposite of how I show up. So we took months and we zoomed out. And we really, really looked. I've been coaching for 8.5 years now as of the time this recording full time. And we looked all the way back to the beginning and we looked for the themes of all of these people I've worked with. What did I help all of them with? All of them, right? No matter if they had no business when they came to me or they had a business they were looking to grow. And what we found is the theme that had also been true through all of my career before that was visibility and storytelling. And that all happened for the most part online because that's my expertise. And so, and also a lot of our people, if I can use that term, our people, you and me, are like, they have some blocks around being visible because they don't want to be attention seeking, or it's scary, or whatever the thing is. And also, people can't know, like, and trust you if you're not out there, right? So we rebranded to something that, I mean, time will tell, we hope is also findable, right? And it's given me the space to speak about both the basics and the higher level things that are always true in business. Always. If you want to have a personal brand, if you want to be a coach, if you want to be a podcaster and you want people to pay you to consult with them, or you want people to pay you to provide a service, how do you create know, like, and trust in a way that's authentic? And that is what I have become really passionate about. How do you share your energy to attract people? Because I think in our industry right now, there's a lot of spam. There's a lot of DMs that are uninvited. And I don't know who that works for, but it doesn't work for me or our people. So there's a better way. And you don't have to check your, like, conscience at the door to do sales in a way that feels gross just so you have sales. And then you get to put on your coach hat and, like, be that human that's like, oh, I'm here to serve after I had to do the sales in this way in order to get money, right? I don't know if you can relate to any of that. Yeah, let's learn the hard way, right? Like, I've tried it all. I've done it all. I figured out what felt gross and what felt authentic. And, like, this is the distillation of 20 years of experience doing that stuff, So there you go. It's a long answer.
No, I love the answer. And there's so many things that I want to, like, bring forward. It's the shift from the money focus to the person focus. It's that heart centered. And I think that this is where a lot of marketing and social media has missed the mark, because so many people are looking for that quick hit of money, that one of the things I realized is, first I was attracting broke people. And I'm like, I love you all broke people. We've all been there. Like, I'm happy to help you, but they weren't the person that I wanted to talk to. And I love that you've shifted into this, like, what was the main core thing? Visibility. And there's these it's funny you bring up that, because, like, visibility wounds was something I didn't even know, like, was a thing until I found a coach that was like, let's work on your visibility. And I'm like, but I can stand out. She's like, no, you're hiding. So I love that you've shifted this into, like, getting visible, because if we shift the script, every time I've done it with any of these podcasts, it's like, what happens when you get visible and you connect with people? The cash just kind of, like, has this weird side effect of, like, following, not by making the sale, but by making the connection. And I don't know if, like, that's kind of what I get of visibility, and why visibility should be first, and connection and all these other things. I don't know if that's something that, like you've noticed also.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I didn't know what this was called. Like, so much of my work has just been, like, what you might call unconsciously competent, that I need someone to help me understand, like, the framework of what I'm doing. Like, I think a lot of us are like this when we coach. We're like, no, it's different for everybody. It's different for everybody. I can't tell you what I do over and over because it's different for everybody. And so for me, it required, like, some strategic people to be like, well, this is the framework that you really actually take people through, that I'm hearing over and over, right? When I wrote my book, it was like that too. I was like, there's no, framework. There's no blah, blah, blah. And my editor was like, yeah, there is. Right. So beautiful. And then my integrator now is like, yeah, there is. Right. So there's people who I think in systems and frameworks. And then there's people who are, I'm such a people person. I'm like, just give me the person in front of me and I will just do the thing. Right. And I will help them. But I need the person. I'm not going to sit down and be like, well, here's step A, B, C, D. Like, I'm going to like, just, turn into a shriveled version of myself sitting at a computer with, like, a Google Doc, right? Blinking at me. Which is another reason that podcasting is such a game changer, because it allows us to share our work in this way. And so what I believe about visibility is that it allows you to hone what you are doing. It allows you to figure out your what we call clonable client, like that person you want to fill your business with, right? And make money at the same time. Like too many people are sitting behind batching their podcast before they launch it. They're sitting behind creating their course before they start helping people. They're sitting behind the perfect website or optimizing this or optimizing that. That's fear. I don't care how strategic you think you're being. Like almost always, that's fear. And visibility is really, really scary because it, I believe, touches on our like primal survival fear of being kicked out of the tribe, which would have ended our lives like however many thousands of years and generations ago, right? But that's not the case anymore. And it's the quickest path to know, like, and trust, even if it's audio only, right? And it informs everything else. The feedback that you get, the programs that you offer, the ways that you help people, the ways that you serve them, the ways that you talk about them, right? I'm curious for your thoughts on this and why you think visibility is so important. But these are the foundations that I really, if you want to have this type of a business, I think you can't do it without this. And I would be, I would fight with somebody about it. How's that?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I'll back you up. I'll be right behind you.
All right, perfect.
Or right next to you. How about me right next to you, not behind you?
Yeah.
I'll put on my box gloves with you.
Yeah, I've got some. Let's do this.
But yeah, so why visibility is important to me is this is one of the things that I thought the market was missing because it's so focused on the wrong things. Like make money first. It's like, okay, no, we can't. We have to focus like that other person. It's a person on the other side. How do we build trust if we're an infomercial?
Yeah. Right. Are you going to run ads before you know who your like ideal client is just because someone in the space told you to? Like, what? Are you just going to talk about the facts and like not your personal brand and expect people to stand out because you wrote everything on ChatGPT? Sorry, not sorry. Like, no.
Yeah.
So what do you see people doing? Like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
What do I see people doing?
Or instead, like they're not doing visibility. They're doing this thing and they're like expecting that to work.
What I really see is people like not showing up as themselves and trying to be a clone of somebody else. This is like this happens so much. And again, I think that coaching is great. I think everyone should find the right coach, but there's this piece of what I was seeing when my clients were coming, by the time my clients had come to me and in my own personal journey, it's like I had aligned with the wrong coaches that had the wrong motive. And what happened is they became a clone of that wrong motive and then they lost themselves. And I think that that's the part of like the storytelling and the getting visible. Like, what's your actual journey? Like your story is someone's life raft. I wrote that book because it literally is like you're an individual and that's what makes your visibility, your story so unique. And when we have a bunch of people cloned out there, it's like, of course it's not going to work. And now you have, Susie over here telling you have to repurpose and be on every single platform. Now you're burnt out. Well, guess what? You've just left more space for her because now you're not doing it anymore.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. Oh my gosh, being on every platform.
Or maybe we should get you started because, this is, again, what I see a lot of podcasters doing. And I see a lot of the industry. I listen to a lot of podcasts about podcasting and it's like, take your one video and your one podcast and put it on TikTok and then on here and on here. Well, by the time you repurpose your podcast, now you're like 6 hours in and you don't really have time to connect with other humans. Like visibility is about connection.
Totally. And like connection with the right people is, I've never had a big audience, and I've been doing this longer than almost any coach I know. The coaches that I started with, there's only a couple of them that I know are still doing it. And that's fine. Like people move on, people get clarity, they do other things, like all good. Like this is my life's work. And I know how many people have connected to me because of my story, because of my personal brand, because of the things that I choose to share. I also know that I could, quite frankly, get a whole lot more engagement and probably more clients if I shared my kids' faces on social media, because like obviously I'm biased and people tell me like they're really beautiful. They're blonde hair, blue-eyed, like little cherub looking angels. I mean, not angels. They're not angels. They're kids. They look like angels. And yet, like, that was a decision from before they were born. I was like, I'm not doing that. Maybe the back of their head once or twice a year. Right. So, but I've very like strategically chosen what to share. And I know that my people they resonate with those things because they tell me. And you don't need that many super fans to have a full coaching business or a full service-based business making podcasts. You don't, because you want to book out a business based on referrals. Guess what? Those connections need to go deep, right? And actually, I want to give a shout out to Luis Diaz. He is a friend of mine who makes podcasts for like really big entrepreneurs. And I messaged him about whether to start over or like start over with a fresh podcast or rebrand. And he just said, Christine, make it so simple. Like, change the name, tell people why you're doing it in an episode, and move on. And I was like, really? Like, this dude knows his stuff. And also, I know that his values align with mine. So I really trusted him. Like, he's a referral partner, right? So I think, but how do we get to that point? We met, we developed a relationship that's been several years long now. And we have a lot of mutual respect for each other, And that didn't happen because I spammed him or because I just met with him once and decided like he should know everything he needs to know about me now. And, the referrals are going to come flying in, right? It's the opposite of that.
Yeah. He's a person.
He's a person. Yeah. He's a person I would want to talk to. And like, he asked me to speak at an event in June in Florida. I live in Kentucky. It was very inconvenient. I had something planned like the next day that I had to red eye to. And I did it anyway. On like, knowing I was going to get no sleep, knowing it was like going to be really chaos and all this stuff, because that's how I show up for the people in my life. Because again, being relationship driven like you are. And that's, I believe, the right kind of visibility. Like, it doesn't matter if it's on a group coaching program with other people, like where you can form connections if they're aligned. That's the kind of thing that's going to keep you in business.
So that's how Let's Get Visible Entrepreneurs was born.
Yes, it was realizing that we were going to make a shift in the business. When the podcast guesting will always be a huge part of how we advise people that they can get visible for all the reasons we talked about in the last episode. And it's not the only way. And we were doing everybody a disservice by saying it's the only way and then having people want to show up transactionally and try to turn what we were building, which is ultimately how to form a relationship from the pitch all the way through to what happens after the podcast. Like, when you zoom out and look at it, it's just building a relationship with somebody. That's it. And it's just an expression of my values. But we decided to extend that because I realized I've been coaching people on all of the ways to get visible and all of the ways to overcome their blocks and whatnot. So let's be clear about that, essentially. And who cares what happens with the downloads? Like, yeah, great. And what we want is the right people,
And I love that you said we don't need a lot of super fans, because I think that's what so many people see, because that's what we see in social media, which is like, oh, super fan, super fan. But I talked to someone on my other show last year, and she had something like 2 million followers on Instagram. And she was on a reality TV show and like had all these things. And I was like, she had she would put it on the podcast, but she's like, realistically, I'm making like $2,700 a month. And I'm like, wow. Like, it was at that moment that I realized, I'm like, okay, a few super fans. Let's get visible. Let's actually make relationships. And that was one of the things, like when we came on the last time, I was like, queen of podcast guesting, because you teach it so differently. And I love this new direction for you because it's business is relationship building. That's the core of it. And we've taken so much of it out to this strategy bullshit. And I'm like, let's back up a little bit.
Well, like, good luck with that. Because like you, I have friends with massive millions social media followers, and I know what's going on behind the scenes of their business. And it's the masses. It's not necessarily the people that love them and that they love back, right? We call this the viral vacillator, where like they might have a massive audience, but they're like throwing stuff at the wall, trying to get something what's going to be the thing that hit? Because I know how to go viral, or else I wouldn't have this massive audience, but I don't know how to build relationships that convert to the clients that I desire, right? So on the outside, everything looks great. And because they have what most people think would solve all their problems, which is like a lot of downloads or a lot of followers. Let's be honest. We've all thought it. We've all been jealous. But like, if you don't have the stuff dialed in to attract seriously the right people, the super fans, the people who will work with you for years because you were visible in that way to let them know you were for them, not just to go viral on your reels. Again, sorry, not sorry. Like, or to grow your podcast to 1 million downloads. It's not going to be sustainable. You're going to get there and be like, this isn't what I thought it was. So, right, let us save you the time and the heartache. And like wherever you are now, go deeper with the people that you love, because only good can come from that, in my opinion.
I'm right there with your opinion, because again, if you go deeper with the right people, it's like my business. My production business is 100% referral. Like until probably 2 or 3 months ago, like I kind of shared it, but I have only pitched one person. Actually, no, I didn't even pitch to one person. They asked me if I did it, and I was like, sure. And that's how I got my first client, because I was already doing it for myself. And it's just been, oh, Jen does that. Oh, Jen does that. Oh, Jen does that. And I love that the visibility piece it's kind of like a cool word for networking and like getting to know people, because if you're in somebody's pocket and you're serving, the referrals just come. And I don't know what kind of magic sorcery it is, but it is.
I love that. Magic sorcery. Yes, please and thank you. More of that. Networking, 100%. And isn't podcasting like the best way to network? Because you're doing interviews. So whether you're a guest or you're a host, right? It's one of the best ways to grow your own show. And you get to really go deep with somebody in a way that then gets released to a lot of other people. That's really unique. Listening behavior is really unique. Consumption behavior is really unique compared to other forms of interviews. And I mean, you get to choose who you interview or are interviewed by. And also, I just want to say, I do not believe in the strategy that's being taught by some folks out there to strategically interview your ideal clients and then pitch them on the back end.
Deep breath. Deep breath. That's one of my, don't go on a rant. Don't go on a rant. Yes, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Terrible. It's terrible. And I'm pretty sure I know where it started. And it makes me cringe. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that, because that's a whole fiery, that's a fire Jen up. Jennifer is angry.
Well, you know what? It's your show. So rant. I have one person who's big in the industry refer to the person that they believe started it as the head of the snake. Oh no. And then like this person said, oh, I have the head of the snake in my DMs. And then the head of the snake showed up in my DM asking me to be on their podcast. And I was like,
so he could pitch you?
For what?
They could pitch you?
Right. Yeah. But it's the same as getting on a million connection calls from anywhere else and being like, well, do you want to work with me? Do you want to work with me? No, you?
Yeah.
I don't like you now, and I definitely don't trust you. So why would I give you my money?
Yeah.
Like, why would I give you my time? You know, and it really is like the opposite of what you're doing. It truly is a numbers game. They literally know if I pitch this many people, I will get this many people to say yes. I would be very curious, though, how many people say yes after that initial contract is up. Like retention, they call it, right? It's like a corporate word for like getting clients to work with you, for having clients that are loyal and work with you for years. Because that begin how you intend to continue, right?
So with the beginning of this new podcast, how has that shifted your business? Like on the backside, like what are you doing differently to align with your new show? New name of your show.
Yeah, good question. So we have started to talk more about the overall ways in which we help people. We have still attracted some folks from the podcast for podcast guesting, which again will always be something that I love and teach. Like I'm here, you know, I'm so honored that I'm back for a second episode. This is just like, I love it so much. And it has created our written content, which not that we're just repurposing the heck out of every episode. Like we're not. And my best stuff comes out like this, like we talked about. So it's allowed me to speak more holistically. Like we don't have to censor now and go, well, that doesn't fit with the theme. How do we tie this back to podcast guesting? It's like, that's one element of being visible. Let's talk about personal branding. Let's talk about niching. Let's talk about the things that I see in the industry that I want to take a stand against that may not have to do with podcast guesting. Let's talk about, you know, where all of those things are going. And like, again, like you, how we holistically help people. It's not just getting people on podcasts, like, because hello, again, that's not enough to build a business, right? So what are the things that visibility can do for you? And then what do you do with that visibility? That's right? Like that's the best. And that's like what we're finding now.
I love that. And of course, we'll have all your stuff linked in the show notes, and you have to get over to her new podcast, and you can still catch all the old stuff because she still is the queen of podcast guesting. And the way that you teach it is like nothing ever that I have seen. And I, again, being in the industry, you gotta toe dip and sample out a lot of people. And I really love that yours is, it's from beginning to after. Like most people just try to get you to the pitch and then saying yes, but then like afterwards, and I'm like, there's so many people that could have been on my show that like would have been great referrals. And I just love the way that you teach that. I love this new direction you're going, because visibility is how we get our stories out, how we make people not feel alone, how we do all things in life. And I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited for you too, because, you know, this podcast ties in with your book. It speaks to like the power of story, which, listen, everybody, all the facts in the world are boring. Stories are memorable. It's how we're wired. If you haven't heard that, like people will remember it so much better. And if you tell stories, and essentially like what you're teaching people is that tell your story, right? And it's going to help somebody else stay in the game, help them put themselves out there, help them serve, help them, whatever it is, not pod fade, stay in business. And it's a complete alignment for you of what you've always taught. So I love that we're having this conversation because we're so on the same wavelength. Thank you.